Hey everybody, I'm Ken Newhouse, and welcome to the world's biggest client acquisition show, the Get Clients Now podcast, where I interview the world's leading experts and extract from them the strategies, systems, tools, and tactics that are delivering real-world results for small business owners and entrepreneurs around the globe. Everybody, Ken Newhouse here, and on today's episode of the Get Clients Now podcast, we're going to actually teach you how to become irresistible in your marketplace by becoming a celebrity authority. So make no mistake about it, if you're looking for a way to get more clients coming into your business consistently, this is a very, very important topic that can undoubtedly help to double, triple, and in some cases even quadruple your new client traffic. So in addition to helping you generate your new client traffic, a consistent flow of quality new client traffic, I'm actually going to cover information with today's guest. That's Carter Rethwisch. He's also known as the Cardinal Cowboy. But I'm going to cover information that will help you rise to the top of your niche in terms of brand position, sales, goodwill, and certainly reputation. You know, a big benefit you might experience as a result of deploying what you learn on today's show is greater predictability and less stress in your business. So certainly by utilizing the strategies that I'm going to give you today, you'll become magnetic to your ideal prospects and clients, attracting them to your business, sort of like moths are attracted to a really bright light on a summer evening. So you'll find yourself in greater demand so that you become the most trusted, most sought after, and certainly the most in-demand expert in your marketplace, which means that you'll enjoy an easier and more efficient sales process as well, which I think is actually pretty cool. So your marketing campaigns will consistently generate impressive ROIs. Your ads are going to convert better. Your customer acquisitions also going to be a lot easier. And the best part of it all is that you're going to be delivering a great experience for your clients and customers before the sale with them actually occurs. So we're not going to use any hype today. We're not going to use any overblown claims, no false scarcity or sales pressure. This is all free for you, but what you're about to discover is actually going to quickly help you position yourself as one of the good guys, or as it were, good gals in your marketplace. And the best part of all is that, you know, even though we're nearing the midpoint of 2017, and certainly we're all facing more competition, I would say, than ever before, your competitors, all of our competitors are actually making things a lot easier for us. Now, why am I saying this? Well, if you're listening to this podcast, there's a pretty good chance that you and I are on the same marketing list, right? So I'm getting the same garbage in my email inbox that you are, the same marketing messages, the same hype, the same empty promises, as fellow business owners and entrepreneurs, you and I are in a pretty special community, I would say. And if you're like me, and if you're like my clients, you're probably fed up with all of the Me Too marketing that's either flooding your email inbox or that you see just pretty much everywhere. So here are some facts. In almost every industry, there's a top player, maybe two at the most, right? And in most cases, their marketing is pretty pathetic. It's horrible. It might sell, but it's really a short-term play in my estimation, because their prospects they're getting turned off by all the hype and all the high-pressure tactics that most of these folks are using. And by the way, if you doubt this, I want to have you go back to your email inbox and look at the latest email promos from whoever the big players are in your industry. Look and see what they're trying to say. So without even knowing who these emails are you're getting, right? I can almost guarantee you that their emails are really based on lots of scarcity wrapped around huge claims, big promises, and then they're using lots of sales pressure on top of that. Does that sound familiar? Well, I'm sure it does. Business owners, entrepreneurs, prospects in your own market are getting more and more frustrated with experts that are almost competent, and they're becoming increasingly desperate for someone who's actually going to be able to deliver real value and treat them well, right? And that's where you come in. So think about it this way. To a guy in the desert, a man in the desert, even an oasis filled with rancid water looks inviting. So if you're really, really thirsty, even bad, nasty, rank, stinky water, as gross as that sounds, it almost looks inviting. And your prospects, your clients, they're in a desert right now. And if you present them with good water, they're going to flock to you in droves, right? So I want you to keep all that in mind as we really dive into the methodology that I want to cover with you today. Now, remember that people in your marketplace are desperate for someone to actually treat them with respect and dignity, and they'll love you when you do it and reward you with sales for years to come. It's really, really important that you focus on delivering exceptional value to your market, right? So without further equation, and the value equation is very simply practical value plus intrinsic value equals total perceived value. By the way I write this down is PV, so that's practical value, plus India Victor, which is intrinsic value, equals Tango Paul Victor, which is phonetic for total perceived value. Okay, so let's go ahead and discuss what each one of these components in this formula represents. So practical value is the thing that your stuff does. So as an example, if you've got a kitchen knife, it would be more valuable in the eyes of your prospects in your market because it cuts vegetables and meat and stuff better than all the other knives in the marketplace, right? So that's one way to make practical value with respect to a knife. It cuts better, right? So it's practically has more value. Now, intrinsic value. What is intrinsic value? Intrinsic value, and this is really, really important, that's the unseen perceived value that is created largely by positioning and promotion of your product, or service, whatever it is that you're selling. So by adding practical value to the intrinsic value, you come up with a total perceived value, okay? Now, this is a writer downer. The big money, the really big money for your business, you're going to find that in the intrinsic value. It's not in the practical value. That's not to say that, by any stretch, I'm not trying to say that you should make your products or services less valuable. I'm not saying that at all. What I am telling you is that you can have the greatest product or service in the world and you can increase its total perceived value by simply increasing its intrinsic value. Now, I want to prove that to you right now. So this concept actually may seem a little bit, kind of weird or ethereal to you, but let me give you an example. Let's consider the practical value. This is something that we can all relate to, right? So what's really good about a car, practically speaking? Well, it'll go from point A to point B and it's faster than walking. That sounds fair. It's reasonable. It's going to keep you sheltered from, reasonable. It's going to keep you sheltered out of the rain and the cold and the snow and the sleet and snow, whatever, or keep you out of the heat and stuff like that, right? You can put your stuff in it. So if you want to put your golf bags in the trunk and head on over to the golf course, you can grab your dog, you can grab your fishing poles, you can throw your mother-in-law in the trunk or whatever. Just kidding. For all you mother-in-laws who are listening. Actually, I love my mother-in-law, so she's a pretty cool lady, but thankfully she's out in California and I'm here in Missouri, just the way I like it. Now, I am kidding, folks. I'm just trying to have a good time with you. So, when you have a car, you don't have to ride the bus, right? You don't have to hitchhike. Another good point. So these are all practical values of a car. I know there are many more, but these are some pretty basic ones. So now let's look at the high-end spectrum of cars. As an example, let's talk about the practical value of my car, the Audi A8. Right? So for starters, this is just an amazing car. It's got a 353 horsepower engine that's going to take you from point A to point B faster than walking, right? It'll keep you protected from the rain and the heat and stuff like that. If you turn the air conditioning on anyway, so it's super cool looking, right? You can put stuff in it, except I would not let my mother-in-law ride in my car. Again, I'm just kidding, guys. So for all you mother-in-laws out there, we love you, right? Anyway, the Audi's better than walking too, and it's certainly better than riding a bus. Right? Now, the thing is, the sticker of this car was about $118,500, and it's a pretty sweet car. Like I said before, I love this car, right? So now let's compare the practical value of my car to the Bentley Continental GT. Now this, I don't want to hurt the feelings of my car, the Audi, but I'd leave that Audi in a second if I could convince myself to spend the money on the Bentley GT. In just a second, you'll see why I have a few reservations. So if we look at the Bentley, certainly it is an absolutely amazing, amazing car. It's got a 585 horsepower V12 engine that's going to get you from point A to point B faster than walking, just like the Audi. Just like my Audi, right? But interestingly enough, the Bentley costs over actually it's about 330% more. It's more expensive than the Audi, right? And what's also super interesting here is that these cars are very, very similar under the exterior. In fact, the differences between these two cars, aside from the, that 585 horsepower beast under the Bentley's hood, are largely cosmetic, right? So sure, the Bentley is much faster than the Audi, which I'm certainly a little jealous of. Actually, it's a lot faster. It's way faster, right? But it's actually very, very similar in a lot of ways, right? So when you check out, as an example, the interior, both of these cars have just extremely high-end, very, very nice leather. They both have state-of-the-art, super fancy computer stuff in them. They're very similar, like I said, in a lot of ways. As a matter of fact, what's really funny is that one could argue that these cars are, almost identical, except for that beast under the hood of the Bentley. right? Especially considering that it's like the Bentley, right? Especially considering that they're both owned by Volkswagen. So almost identical except for that monster engine under the hood of the Bentley, right? I want that car actually. So in fact, industry gossip has it that the Bentley people clamoring to spend over 300% more money for the Bentley. You know, the price difference, like I said, in dollar amount is like $250,000. I could buy 2 more Audis. So I could have 3 Audis for the price of 1 Bentley. So why is that? Why is the Bentley so much more expensive than my Audi? Well, the answer, of course, lies in the intrinsic value, right? Here's the thing. Bentley is positioned as obviously the best. You know, in popular culture, we use it as a metaphor for describing a product, you know, as being awesome, right? We say this is the Bentley, or another example is like the Rolls Royce of, of the XYZ industry, right? That's how you would describe, the best possible product or service that you were trying to use a metaphor to describe, right? Bentley's globally positioned as it's the best, right? When you drive a Bentley, your identity completely changes. It's totally different. So as an example, if you pull up to a meeting in a Bentley, you're going to be treated much, much differently than if you pull up in an Audi, albeit a super sweet car, or, versus a Honda Civic or whatever. Versus a Honda Civic or whatever. You're going to be viewed differently. You're going to be viewed as a rock star, like somebody who's super, super successful. You're going to be viewed as someone who's very significant. People notice this car, the significant stuff. This is what you're really paying the extra $250,000 for to drive a Bentley. It's not the fact, that there might be a slightly different grain of leather or an extra, say, 260 horsepower plus or minus a few under the hood. I really want that car. So you can see it's even working on me. The power of intrinsic value is even working on me. And I'm supposed to be the marketing guy who's immune to all this. I'm not. It's human nature, right? All of this ties into intrinsic value. So why is this a big deal for you? Why is increasing intrinsic value? Why is it going to help you get more clients and boost your profits more than anything else? Well, first of all, increasing intrinsic value allows you to charge more for what you're selling, your products and services. And think about this. This is another writer-downer. And services. And think about this. This is another writer-downer. Price is the number one factor in profitability. Let me explain that. I know a lot of people, especially when we talk about internet marketing, talk about how important, conversions are, sales conversions, right? And all that kind of stuff. But let's say that your conversion rate, for the sake of my point here, let's say that stayed the same. Let's say that your cost to acquire a new client remains the same. Let's say your cost to fulfill your services, that stays the same. And while all those factors I just mentioned can remain the same, let me ask you this question. What would happen to your profit if you doubled your price? Well, your profits would double, just like that, right? So in reality, we need to focus on how we can charge more instead of just focusing on little breakthroughs on things like, well, should we change the headline, or should we use, a different blogging software or whatever? Those things, those are not breakthroughs. Figuring out how to charge more and then sell more of your products and services, those are things that I consider to be back to the cars. Every time Ferrari comes out with a new car, for example, the car sells out immediately, even before it's shipped from Italy to the United States, right? The new model's already gone. And there are people literally, this is insane, but there are people paying literally $50,000 to $60,000 over sticker price when the car gets to America because it's in such great demand. Now, think about the Ferrari salesperson, right? A Ferrari salesperson doesn't even really need to know how to sell. Right? Think about this. When a new model comes out, like the 488 or whatever the last one was that came out, the Ferrari sales professionals, these people are in heaven because they just stood around and took orders, and it's always above sticker. They don't have to try to sell anybody, right? There's never any negotiation. They're selling cars with zero effort. The demand for these cars is so high. And why is that? Because their intrinsic value has been built up so much that Ferrari's quote-unquote loyal fans, these people simply go crazy. Already got quote-unquote loyal fans, these people simply go crazy over these cars, right? Now, here's an example that's a little more down to earth. I think we can all associate with. An iPhone. The very same thing happens with the iPhone. So here's an example. The new iPhone comes out. First day it's out, second day it's out. You got a huge line of people standing outside the Apple store trying to get an iPhone, right? Half these people, probably even more, probably like 3/4. They've already got an iPhone, so they're paying extra to get what's basically a carbon copy of what they've already got in their pocket. But guess what? It's new and it's exciting, right? And they do this because Apple has created a massive level of intrinsic value for their products. This is very, very instructive for you. Now, as we go through this training, I'm actually going to teach you how to increase intrinsic value. So make sure you pay attention as we go. This is really cool stuff, and it's a really awesome level of training that I'm giving you today because it's going to help you make, first, it's going to help you get a lot more clients, but it's also going to help you make a lot more money, right? And so, by the way, did you make a lot more money, right? And so, by the way, did you also hear about, the last time iPhones came out? I thought this was kind of funny. People were actually hiring homeless dudes out in California to stand in line for them, right? And then there were a couple homeless dudes that actually started fighting over who could stand in line for who. It was kind of crazy. So if you want to whip your marketplace into that much of a frenzy, so you've got people really, they're ready to stand in line for what you got. They're ready to pay top dollar for what you've got. And if you want to make your fans, not just customers, you want to make them raving fans. If you want them to love you that much, then you're going to have to learn how to actually increase the intrinsic value of what you're selling, which at its core is really what today's episode is all about. So I know we talked about earlier, I mentioned that the title for this show is how to become magnetic to your marketplace by creating celebrity authority, right? By implementing the celebrity authority strategy. So we'll get to that in just a bit. This all ties in. So let's go ahead and keep moving on. Intrinsic value also increases the effectiveness of your sales process. Now that should really get a few of you to snap to attention. So let's go back to Apple. They didn't have to try to sell you the iPhone when you went to the store, right? So when you get to the Apple store, they don't have to try to use a sales pitch on you to sell you an iPhone, right? They're like, "Oh, you want a phone? Okay, go ahead and stand out in line with all the other people, and when it's your turn, we'll buzz you or we'll send you, like they did with me, we'll send you a text." I'm a direct response internet marketing copywriter and consultant. I'm a guru, guys. I'm like a big deal. Do the people at the Apple store really care who I am? No, they could care less, right? They're like, go stand in line with everybody else and we'll text you. That's literally what they told me. We'll text you when it's your turn, right? Think about this. Does the Ferrari guy, does he have to try to sell you, the new model of Ferrari when it comes out? No. He's like, okay, well, it's going to cost you about 50 grand or more than what it says in the car window if you want that model, right? And in spite of all these things, because your business is different, it is certainly possible. I've accomplished it in my chiropractic practices years ago. It's been, 14 years ago now since I practiced. I've done it multiple times. I've helped other people do it, and you can do it as well, right? All the examples that I've given you are fueled by increasing the intrinsic value. Both of the main profit drivers are fueled by the increase in intrinsic value. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about how to build intrinsic value since it's really that important. So the question we have to ask now is how do we actually build it, right? And the answer is we build it through positioning. Now, I want you to think about positioning a bit differently than you might be doing now. And usually when we think about positioning, most of us are probably thinking big brands, like brand positioning, things like that. The fact is that those companies can spend literally hundreds of millions of dollars to build a brand. And that's pretty cool, but none of us are in that business, right? If you're listening to this podcast, you're either an entrepreneur, if you're listening to this podcast, you're either an entrepreneur, a business owner, a professional services provider, maybe a sales professional, something like that. The fact for us is that we work with people, right? We help them to get like a better result, whether that's maybe helping them in their business, maybe helping them get new clients or customers, helping them streamline their business. Maybe we help them with relationships, their health, maybe losing weight or fitness, or maybe investments, whatever it is, right? So let's talk about how this actually matters to you and me. So first of all, let's identify some magnetic positioning angles, or what I like to call power positioning strategies that are actually going to draw prospects from your marketplace. They're going to draw them to you like moths on a flame, so to speak, right into your business. So the first one that comes to my mind is exclusivity, right? Now, this is ingrained in our human nature, and all of us want something. We want to be somewhere, we want to be someone, or be with someone, or have something that other people just can't have. It's very exclusive, right? Rare just can't have. It's very exclusive, right? And why is that? Because it makes us feel significant. Another really good power positioning strategy is something that's rare. Now, that's kind of right up there with exclusive, but it's different to a degree. I'm sure you've heard an example, an infomercial, maybe seen the infomercials or, read in a magazine, something for rare coins or something like that. That's a great example of this particular angle. Things that are exciting, that's a great positioning strategy. Things that are original, that's a very magnetic positioning strategy. Having a product or service that exudes contrarian, as in think about some of these car commercials. People People like you don't run with the crowd because you're different. You're better. That's another power positioning strategy. And one of my favorites is Dan, and that's mean old Dan Kennedy. He and Jay Abraham were the first two marketing mentors that I ever worked with, and they're both actually mentors of mine still to this day, some 27 years later. But Dan is notorious for being contrarian. He likes to argue with pretty much everybody. Is for being contrarian. He likes to argue with pretty much everybody. It's in terms of traditional media anyway. His whole positioning strategy can be summed up, I guess, like this. All you big ad agencies are idiots. Everything you're doing is wrong, and I can do it 100 times better than you can. And for the record, Dan's right in this regard, right? Okay, so here's another one, mysterious. We're all drawn into things that are mysterious with mystery and intrigue, right? Forbidden is another one. It's very, very magnetic. So I want you to think about how, as an example, think about teenagers, 18, 19-year-old kids. They want to get into the bar. Why? Because they're not supposed to be in the bar, right? So, and also there's mystery and intrigue. They don't know what's in the bar, so they want it. So they're very drawn to that. A lot of kids, not all of them. There are some good, virtuous kids left in the world. People are like cats. I guess this is the best way I could explain it. You put people in a room, you put us in a room, close the door, and the only thing we want to do is see what's on the other side of the door, right? Just like a cat. And I'm not a cat person. If you're a cat lover, I feel sorry for you. I am a dog person, 110%. Although I do like cats, I can't say that I'm not a cat person. My daughter has a cat. I like the fact that they're, killers, predators. They're very predatory, and I like that. I don't like the fact that they walk in their feces and then walk on my furniture. So that's the thing I don't like about cats. Nevertheless, back to positioning strategies. Another really good one is popularity or something that's popular. There's safety in numbers, and that's a very effective positioning. It's very magnetic, right? Affinity to market. This person is just like me. This is another level of positioning that's really magnetic to money. Okay. Now you can choose any of these or make up one on your own that's that you think is going to work for you. But the bottom line is that you're going to want to choose one of these strategies that is, first of all, it's got to be accurate and true. I don't ever condone you lying or manipulating or taking advantage of people. I hope you don't do that. And if you do, I hope you fail miserably and that you suck. Once again, I'm assuming that you're doing a good job for your clients, customers or patients. I'm assuming your clients, customers or patients. I'm assuming that you're living up to your promises and you're delivering a really good service or super good products. And with that assumption, I want to make this important point. This is a very important point I want you to remember. You might even want to write this down. The thing that's going to help you get the best and greatest number of clients, the thing that's going to pay you the most money in your business, absolutely hands down, is your ability to position yourself successfully in your marketplace, right? The better you're positioned in your marketplace, the more money you're going to make, period. End of story, right? That's a non-arguable fact, okay? Let me explain this to you. But to help you get a really clear picture, I want you to develop a mental picture. Obviously, this is a podcast, so you're going to have to use your imagination just a bit here. But I want you to imagine a large triangle. Now, if you're looking at this triangle on the paper, it has 5 lines drawn across it. 4 lines. This creates 5 levels. You got the bottom, and each level, they're all spaced equally apart, the levels. And at the bottom of this triangle or this pyramid, right? These represent different positions within a market. And the higher up in the pyramid you go, the more money you're going to make. So let me explain, how this works. And actually, this is a very accepted rule within marketing and business. This is how things work, right? Now, at the bottom, we have the generalist. This is the person who does everything, maybe like a handyman. If you think about going to the physician, this would be like a general practitioner physician, right? Let's look at it at that level. So think about, as I said, medical doctors. I think this is a really, I think using them is going to provide a very clear example because, we all go to the doctor at some point in our lives, right? So the general practitioner, she's not going to be paid as much as a specialist. The specialist is the person directly above her, the level directly above her on this pyramid. Now, the heart surgeon, right? The heart surgeon is going to command much higher fees than the primary care doctor, the doctor you go see when you've got a cold, right? When you've got a cold, right? Why is she going to make more money? Well, she's a specialist. Now, the next level above the specialist, that's the level for an authority. So if you've got a heart surgeon who's like the number one heart surgeon in the, in the Midwest, right? And all the other heart surgeons say that you need to go see this gal, she's going to be paid more than all of those people, right? She's the next level up. Now, we've covered the generalist. That's the person at the very bottom, and that represents most people in business. Then up one level from that is the specialist, and then up
another level from the specialist is the authority, right? The specialist that's an authority, each making more money than the folks on the level directly below them. Now, let's go to the fourth level. This is where the real magic starts to happen. This is where the celebrity resides. Celebrity positioning is very, very powerful, and there are two incredibly significant components here, and I want you to really think about these, right? Number one is that celebrity is very magnetic to money. Stars. Just think of LeBron James. Think of these people. So they're celebrities and they make a lot of money. And as far as people in Hollywood, some of these people are dumber than a box of rocks, but because they're celebrities now, and they're making a ton of money because of this positioning strategy of celebrity. Now, the second thing about this that's even more important is that you can actually manufacture or engineer celebrity right out of thin air. Now, I am not suggesting for a moment that you are to deceive anyone, but think about this. All celebrity, no matter who it is in the world, doesn't matter, is engineered through a series of events. And what's really super cool for you and me is that we can deliberately mimic those series of events and we can create celebrity positioning for ourselves in our own marketplaces. This is very cool. Most people simply do not know this, right? They don't know it. I'm going to teach you how to do that today, right? Now, speaking of celebrity positioning, let's talk about Donald Trump. Love him or not, Donald Trump has taken it up another level from celebrity, right? He's taken it to the top position on our pyramid. Now, what is that? This level, by far, this is the pinnacle, by far, is the most magnetic to money, and that is the position of celebrity authority, right? There's no other position in any marketplace on the planet that is more magnetic to money than that of celebrity authority. And that's what today's call with Carter, the Cardinal Cowboy, is all about. So if you want to become the most trusted, the most sought after, the most in-demand individual, company, brand, or thought leader in your marketplace, you should be asking yourself this question. Okay, how can I create and deploy celebrity authority positioning so I can utilize its benefits in my marketing and in my marketplace, right? If you get this right, one last point before we bring Carter on the call. If you get this right, you will never, and I mean never, find yourself wanting for new clients ever again. You'll literally, you'll have more new clienting for new clients ever again. You'll literally, you'll have more new clients and more money than you've ever imagined possible, right? So if you're ready, let's go ahead and bring Carter in on the call. All right, everybody, I've got Carter Rethwisch with us today. Carter, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. Hey, thanks for doing the show with me today. For those listeners who may not know who you are, if you could, I know you as the Cardinal Cowboy. That's how I was introduced to you. But since I've come to know you and learn more about you, and actually that's the genesis for why we're doing our call today, is that you are a highly accomplished internet marketer and you've got a pretty awesome business, which we'll get to in just a bit. But if you could give me a little bit of your backstory. Actually, you and I also share something very much in common, which most people really can't understand, and that's that we were both in a really serious car accident and almost died. So if you could, give us a little backstory.
Sure, yeah. So I'll go back to my early days a little bit. As a kid, I was an avid baseball player. Was real competitive and played in real competitive leagues. And went off to college to play baseball. Right before I went to college, I won the award for most valuable player for my SLABA team, the St. Louis Amateur Baseball Association, the most competitive league in the area. A lot of people would argue, and we won the whole Midwest region. And I just won the most valuable player for my team. So I go into college and was ready to play ball at Central Methodist University and was hit by a drunk driver on the way home to visit friends here in St. Louis. And obviously that circumvented that meeting with my friends because I ended up on the side of the road. The driver of our car, Jimmy Barnes, ended up passing away about 6 days later. But while I was on the side of the road, they said, "Hey, you're okay. We'll go ahead and send the first ambulance." And they said if they hadn't taken me and put me, if I hadn't had seizures at the time, they wouldn't have stopped the first ambulance, and they would not have sent me in that first trip to the hospital. They said I wouldn't have made it.
So yeah, correctly. Didn't they take they took the one young man that was in the ambulance and they actually triaged you and next stopped and then came back, took him out, and then put you in, and that's what ultimately led to your being alive today.
Yeah, it was actually the drunk driver that hit us, and he was about 55 at the time, but he had 5 DWIs before this happened, and so this is just another. So yeah, they pulled him out. It's a matter of just getting people into the ambulance, taking him to the hospital. He was already in the ambulance. They took him out, put me in, and they said if I hadn't made that first trip, I would probably not be here today. So I proceed to go into the ambulance. They shoot me over with a drug called Dilantin. I talked to some paramedics since then. They don't use that drug anymore, but it stops seizures. But then very often after that, if you're depending on the severity of the situation, you can go into a coma. So I went into a coma where they told my parents, they alerted my parents, and my parents were actually coming back from school after it was homecoming weekend down there. And they said, can I talk after it was homecoming weekend down there? And they said, can I talk to my son? And when they told my dad that he could not talk to me, he knew it was pretty severe. But proceeded, like I said, went into a coma. They gave me less than 50-50 odds to survive. I didn't know that. Obviously, I was in a coma at the time, but I battled and ended up pulling my arms out of the restraints, grabbed the ventilator out of my own throat, and then pulled it out of my throat. And they said, well, he's going to survive. So that was exciting, good news. And my parents were just happy that I was going to make it, apparently. But the prognosis from there was not good. They told my parents, and they didn't tell me this for many years after, which is, I think, a good thing. But they said that they would likely have to take care of me for the rest of my life, help me shower, help me eat. But I was just bent on not letting this stop me or destroy my dreams, and I kept going. So I stayed in school, graduated, actually transferred back to St. Louis U, which is where I went for my freshman year, transferred to Central, and back to St. Flu. Went through all kinds of therapeutic diagnosis and some rehabilitation, but I stayed in school the whole time. Doctors and teachers and everybody said I shouldn't have, but I did. Graduated and then proceeded to just continue with what I wanted to accomplish in my life. The baseball dream was over. I had coaches, my college coach was assured me that there was a good chance he had the connections and I had the ability, that there'd be a good shot I would get drafted at some level or whatever. And you never know, but I was a pretty good ball player. But that was over. So then continue on and decided to go into my backup plan, which at that time my parents had made me go to computer classes back when I was a kid. When I would go, the other kids would be running around the neighborhood. I was playing baseball 40 games a summer. Plus, I had to go to computer classes to do some advanced computer stuff. So the backup plan kicked in, and that's really what I do now. But it turned into something where I went into support. I was selling computers right out of college, and then I went into work for Citigroup. Citigroup offered me a job as a contractor. They wanted to convert me to an employee. So my dad said, well, let's try this contractor thing for a little bit. Got my next contract position for a little brewery based out of St. Louis called Anheuser-Busch.
So that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, fairly well-known company around the world. Yeah, so I started off answering phones. At that point, I had a master's degree, had finished grad school, and was doing my thing, answering phones. And so I said, hey, I'd really like to potentially start building these servers and helping maintain the servers for the company. At that point, they're like, well, you don't have a whole much background. You've done a little computer support desk stuff, but we'll give you a chance. Well, I had on my own been building computers in my parents' basement, and taught myself a lot of that, and continued on my way. So they said, we'll give you the shot to do this, and then on probationary terms. So then I, within a year and a half, was building the corporate clustered email servers. At the time, it was Windows NT 4.0, Exchange 5.5 clustering, which nobody really did. And then the 2000 and all the advanced stuff you get into. And did that for the next 8 years, managed those different things around the corporation, rerouting servers in remote locations in Shanghai and London. And that was the excitement that I got to be part of. A lot of people were becoming aware of the fact that there might be a hostile takeover. And I was aware of that literally a couple of years before most people. And then InBev came in 2008. And then it was off to a new adventure. And I decided to get into sales instead of support. Took a pretty dramatic pay cut to do that. And but figured I could work hard enough. And I looked at the pay structure and the commission structure. And it was about work hard enough. And I looked at the pay structure and the commission structure. And so I took a base salary that was about a third of what I was making when I worked for AB. But I knew that if I just followed their commission structure, I could move up the ranks. And ended up being one of the top guys at the time, was Google's largest partner, responsible for about 2% of their revenue. They had 55 locations around the world, 55 different cities, and about 500 reps. And I became one of the top 3, one of the top 5, number 1 a few times in the entire company. And so after doing that, I said, hey, you know what? I can do this better if I start my own little company. So proceeded on to start up my own company, and it's just been excitement ever since, and that's really where we're at today, and getting to help a lot of small businesses.
Okay, so before we really dive into that, because actually I'm really excited to talk to you about that, the topic that we're covering on the show today, and actually I kind of covered some of this in the intro, the part I did up into the game, some of this in the intro, the part I did up into the point where I started talking to you, is how to create celebrity authority in a marketplace, and that is the ultimate strategy for gaining market domination, and I know that's a strategy that you could literally write the book on that. You, without question, are one of the most recognized celebrity authority figures, certainly in the Midwest, when it comes to people who like Cardinal baseball and just people in St. Louis in general. But you've actually done a lot of work with that, and actually I want to tie these two together, because while you're doing awesome work with the internet marketing and you're helping small businesses, and like I said, we're going to dovetail back around into that because that's really the crux of the call today. I want to kind of build up to that, so to speak, by talking to you a little bit about how you got started with, the whole identity of Cardinal Cowboy, and then how you've grown that identity. It really is large. You're pretty much recognized anywhere you go. And then how you've been able to take the strategies that you used for yourself, and you've been using these, and how you've been able to take the strategies that you used for yourself, and you've been using these. I think Cardinal Cowboy really is for, I guess, helping people in need. I want you to tell me, but you've been able to take the things that you've actually done, and now you're applying those and helping small businesses do that in their own business as well. But tell me first about the Cardinal Cowboy and how that got started and where you're taking it.
Yeah, so along the way, I'm an avid baseball fan, and this ties back into the story where, baseball career was ended. Started to play some semi-pro baseball after my coma. Didn't quite get back to the level I was at just because mentally I had some things that were different and my approach was different. But I really enjoyed the Cardinals. So I said, you know what, my dad has this Augie Busch red cowboy hat. And I had fun with that. I'd taken it from him and started wearing it to games with the hat and the jersey. And then I said, you know what, I should have been out there, I feel. I'm going to wear these baseball pants to the game. And we're just going to see what happens. Who knows? So my friends were already kind of joking when I would wear the hat and the jersey. When I worked at Anheuser-Busch, they called me the Cardinal Cowboy. I have no idea, but I've been through a coma. I don't really worry what people think so much. I know what life is about. I know what's important, and we're just gonna have some fun. Life is short. So I went out and did it. Didn't know really. I was like, oh boy, am I gonna get shunned? What's gonna happen? And the response I got was rather incredible. And so people just really want. And at that time, this new internet thing was really had emerged, and so I created my own website called cardinalcowboy.com. And what I would do is take pictures with people because they'd want to come up with me, but not very many people at that time had a digital camera. But I'm being a computer nerd, had a digital camera. So I had a friend who was always there with me, whether it was my friend Lizelle or my friend Jamie, and they would just snap pictures of me with whoever, and I'd say, hey, your picture's on my website. Go to cardinalcowboy.com. So that's really where it started. And with that, I figured, I'm getting a lot of attention with this. If I don't do something really positive with this, my parents are going to kill me. And that was my opportunity to really tie in, the whole story. It was my opportunity to really tie in, the whole story about how I overcame the coma. And so I started going to groups and visiting schools and talking to people about what I was doing, because they would be entertained by what I do and how I would get the crowd going and have the fun at the Cardinal games. And I've been doing this for 12 years. The Cardinals know very well what I do, and they've had me up for the Major League Baseball Player, the Fan of the Year award. I wish it was Player of the Year, right? But I got to do some fun stuff with all that. And now it's really turned into a philanthropic thing where I get to try to inspire as many kids and talk to them about, hey, look, I was written off. The doctor said I was not going to survive. And then after I did, they said, well, they were going to take care of me for the rest of my life. So let me show you what you can do, and go out and go after anything you want. So when I didn't make it as a professional baseball player, a lot of people do enjoy the fact that I kind of made it as a public figure. Some people say a celebrity in the community, but I like to imagine that I'm kind of an inspirational figure that likes to. But I like to imagine that I'm kind of an inspirational figure that likes to just help people be promoted and positive and believe in themselves and go. And as my card says that I hand out to kids, dream and then chase your dreams. A lot of people dream, they just don't do the follow up with actually going after it. And I just, even after I went through my coma, didn't let anything stop me, and I just continued to chase dreams and go after and accomplish everything I set my mind to.
That's actually one of the things that, I instantly recognized you. I would see you, and obviously at the Cardinal baseball games, I would see you on television. But when I started seeing you at business events, many of these were actually exclusive events. I'm like, I know that guy. I know that guy. I got to meet that guy someday. And then the last time we actually met, where we actually really actually met, where I gave you a copy of my book. I was doing a presentation, and you stood up and you asked a question. I answered your question, and then you went on to say, I completely understand where you're coming from, because I was in a near death accident just like you can. I was in a coma just like you, and so on and so forth. And so you have a man. I was in a coma just like you, and so on and so forth. And so what really intrigued me about that initially was you were a very successful person in business. I knew you were helping lots of other people, but see, you had come back from a tragic accident just like I had. And so that really was the inspiration for me wanting to talk to you. And since I started talking to you, that's when I started to find all this other stuff. I also had no idea. You have a master's degree. Tell me about your master's degree, which I'm sure most people just don't know. I don't know that you tell people, but they should know.
Yeah, I just after I got out of college, kind of floated through there, but graduated on time. Didn't get real great grades, but started to do stuff. I said, I was selling computers. I said, I've got to just get a bit more advanced training. I'm going to see if I can handle grad school. And I had to go through some special testing and stuff to get in, and along the way. But I just went in and said, I really have an inspiration to do some stuff related to this new thing called the internet. And so I wrote my thesis started on that path, and then within a year and a half, 2 years, I'm getting straight A's. I think I had 1B or 1C out of all of that, and just really got into this whole thing about the way the internet was going to change the way the world operated. But by the time I was 24, I was just about to turn 25. The graduation, I think, was on the 1st. My birthday is May the 8th, which is coming up here again. So don't let me know how old I am now, right? But I literally walked out of there and go, I'm 24 years old, and I've got a master's degree now. Another goal I set for myself, even though all the experts said I would not be able to accomplish something like that. And that master's degree now really helps separate me in a number of different ways, just because of the focus that I put on it. Because now the internet's been around for 25 years publicly for most people that realize when it started. It's been around actually since the 60s.
Right.
I did a history chapter,
Right.
DARPA, and it's really just changed the way we do things. But yeah, that master's degree I like to leverage because it does give me an advantage to say, here's some of the background, and when you get that kind of training that you get from an advanced degree like that, you realize how these things all interact and connect, and how they best help businesses, charities, organizations to accomplish their goals, and that's turned into what I do for a living now.
Okay, and so getting to the primary topic, I created a formula some time ago. It's a value equation, and really how to increase the total perceived value that your marketplace has for you or your business or your products or services. And so first, and I actually learned this from Eugene Schwartz. He's one of the greatest copywriters who ever lived. His book, Breakthrough Advertising. If you can find a copy, you're going to get a used copy. You're going to pay at least $250 for it on Amazon for a used copy. I actually took the time to. I'm a copywriter, but one of the things that I thought I would try to improve my skill, I rewrite old sales letters by hand routinely, and I still do that every week. One of the things that I thought I would try is to better learn his information I retyped his entire book by hand. And I retyped his entire book by hand. And I want to say by hand, I didn't write it. I typed it out in Microsoft Word. But one of the formulas that I came up with based on his work was that practical value plus intrinsic value equals total perceived value. And so you've been a master. You've done a masterful job at, number one, the practical value you offer to your customers and clients. And now we're kind of segueing over into the business side of the things. In your business,
I went profit.
the practical value is actually, let's say, for example, if you're going to buy a car, right? One of the examples I used in one of the training videos I do, I talk about an Audi A8. It's one of my favorite cars. And then I compare that with the Bentley GT, right? And so a Bentley GT, essentially, both cars are owned by Volkswagen. The chassis is essentially the same. Several of the models, the engine is essentially the same. But why is it that the Audi A8L sells for about the Bentley GT, essentially the same car? They both can take you from point A to point B. You can put stuff in them. You can stay dry when you're driving. You can listen to music while you're driving, so on and so forth. A lot of similarities between them, but why is it that the Bentley cost over 330% more than the Audi? So a Bentley GT for a 2017 model, you're looking at about $363,000 for the car. Now, as much as I want that car, my wife would kill me if I ever tried to spend that kind of money on a car. I mean, it was, the Audi was a stretch as it is. But my point is, the reason people spend that kind of money is because the intrinsic value, they've done an awesome job at really increasing the intrinsic value of that brand. And so that's something that you do very, very well. You've done it. You've demonstrated that you know how to do this because you've done it for yourself in spite of all the obstacles that you've had to overcome, but at the same time doing this. And so with respect to creating celebrity authority, what are some of the tools that you guys use? I know you guys have a TV show. If you could talk a little bit about the TV show and how that's really, it's growing in popularity. I don't know, it's almost viral, but at the same time, it's really doing dramatic things for your clients and customers that you actually, bring onto that show. So if you could talk a little bit about that and how that can actually benefit our listeners. And it might be something, we're going to get to the end of this, at the end of the show, I'll actually give people the opportunity to give your contact info so they can get a hold of you. But this is actually a game changer. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, essentially the insight that I had was towards, first off, and I talk to all of my clients, you have to, I don't care if you're a dentist next to another dentist, you have to separate yourself. You have to do something unique, demonstrate something you do that you specialize that makes you better or stand out among the crowd. And that's where I just point makes you better or stand out among the crowd. And that's where I just point to people, people say, well, I get what you're talking about because you wear a baseball uniform and a cowboy hat to the Cardinal game. So it's real easy for me to stand out. Then on top of that, you've got to do something that is positive and drawing and does something to gain good attention. Because if you do something bad with it, then you just cause yourself to be, a spectacle. But if you do something positive with it, then people start to gravitate towards that. So they're attracted to something that separates you, and then they see the good that comes out of it, and they really want to be part of it. And so what I learned is I could do that with this Cardinal Cowboy character that I created. And then I transfer that into where that has been many times. I'm on ABC. I'm on Channel 5. I'm on Channel 4. I was on Channel 5 just the other day. And every station in St. Louis, whether it's radio, television, I've been on at some point because I brought that, standout character type that is unique and then have the message to go along with it that is television. I've been on at some point because I brought that, standout character type that is unique and then have the message to go along with it that is positive. Now, I don't expect every business owner to go run around in a baseball uniform at the Cardinal game, but they can do something that stands out. And whether that's, and these days, that's a lot easier to do. And so when I realized how it is possible to get on television, and you put together a show, ABC had come to me and said, hey, would you like to have a show on our network? We'll put you on. And I said, just give me a spot. I just want some airtime, then that's fine. We'll do this. And I'm going to highlight the small businesses. So now we take those small businesses and say, hey, let's have you talk about your business, what makes you stand out, why you're exceptional, what you do different, some hurdles that you go ahead to overcome, and why we should trust you as a business and a business owner to do, provide your service that you provide. And we edit it down to a 3-minute clip and put it on our show. And then they can take that clip and really use this new thing called social
To the growth.
through the world to really expound upon their message and demonstrate how they really do stand out.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm really trying to give to people with that product.
Okay, and so really that goes back to again another one of the the templates or the frameworks that I try to use to explain to people why this is so critical to the growth and success and profitability of their business. So imagine if we were to draw like a pyramid shape, a triangle. At the very bottom of that, you have a generalist. So if we were to look at a medical doctor as an example, the primary care doctor is a generalist, and then let's say you have a problem that he can't help, so then you're going to next go to the specialists. Right? Well, let's say the specialist can't help you because you have a serious life-threatening problem, and the next person above that is the person who's the authority. Authority person is someone who is seen among specialists, not only amongst his peers, but also amongst the public, which in this case would be the marketplace. That person is seen as an authority. And then from there, the next person who's got more credibility over you, a professional, maybe you're in practice, a dentist, a chiropractor, a medical doctor, cosmetic surgeon, any of these. If you become a celebrity authority, right, which you've done an excellent job helping your clients and customers reach that pinnacle, That is the ultimate. And so not only do you have the TV show, not only do you have these, you've got a huge following on social media. And actually, I did some research on you prior to the call, and I was actually, I was really impressed. You had over 3 million. Actually, this, I think, was on Major League Baseball.com's website. It was a world recognized website. It was a baseball website, but they said you got over 3 million website hits. That is incredible. So what you have done you have demonstrated that you know what you're doing because you've used it for yourself and it's out there for everybody to see. And now people can also see all the different clients and customers and their businesses you've been able to help. So you've got the TV show, the promotion through social media. What are a few of the other things that you guys have that are really, really helping your clients out? Take about 2 minutes and nail those down for me if you could.
The essence of what we do is to help businesses get business, right? And so when they're out on the internet, and one of the key components that we've really focused on, this is where it's another fortune that I'm running around doing my thing. I'm sitting in a meeting with a guy who I don't know who he is, but he's the expert from this guy's roofing guy. And find out he's one of the top Google guys in the world. And he's been following me for a while. Now he said, hey, I had a chance to meet you. I heard you were going to have this meeting with this roofing company, and I've helped them out with a friend of his. And he said, let's do this together now, and I want to show you some really advanced stuff. So if you want to get into some advanced stuff, this guy is a guru, and I work directly with him now. And the biggest thing that companies need to worry about is reputation. Right? Reputation is key to your survival. If you've got bad ratings all over the internet, you've got to get that fixed. Or if you take that the opposite way and say, hey, now I've got that reputation because I've done a good job of proactively. Asking clients to give us some feedback, tell us what we're doing. If we've had a problem, show us how we can fix the problem. And then you become the clear and obvious choice because you've got 927 reviews that are positive about you right there on Google when somebody types in roofing company St. Louis.
Let me just interject something real quick here, just to add more emphasis to the fact why this is this should not be overlooked or ignored. One of the niches that I worked in for a long time, I don't as much anymore, was dentistry. And so in helping dentists get new patients, one of the problems that goes right to the heart of what you're talking about now is not only could you have a disgruntled patient who could leave you a negative review, I saw time and time again, if a dentist were to actually fire a staff person, that person would, even if they deserve to be fired, one of the big challenges in dentistry is embezzlement. Dentists are oftentimes ripped off of lots of money. Small amounts over time add up to a lot of money, but these people could be fired and then they could turn right around and just say all manner of just things about the dentist that are not even true, and there's no recourse until, or maybe even a competitor. That's another thing I saw. Competitors leaving false negative reviews about a company. And so they're up until companies, specifically what you guys are doing now, this really has been the death knell for a lot of companies, for a lot of professional practices. But now there's a solution to eliminate negative reviews, false reviews, things online that could be very, very damaging to your company. So if a person wanted to, if our listeners wanted to actually contact you with respect to that, actually, before I get to that, is there anything else that you guys offer? Because we've got about a minute and a half left, and I want to cover that. And then I want to give contact information because people definitely need to get a hold of you. You definitely have a viable service that I think can serve a lot of people and meet a lot of needs.
Yeah, well, we've got our core stuff that we can show you how to get traffic to your video. Then we do these most recently sales funnel pages where you put the video on a beautiful page that really encapsulates what you do and it drives business. You can't go off and wander off anywhere else. It's a funnel page and it has everything contained right there, and you just keep scrolling down.
So it's a great page. It's a great page. Sorry, you cut out a little bit on that. So I just want to make sure our listeners can hear, because I think the meat of what you said was just, I think the cell phone connection wasn't good, but that's literally an opt-in page where you can drive with all the other work you're doing. You drive leads, really highly qualified leads, to an opt-in page, and these people are able to capture these highly qualified hot prospects right on that page that you guys built for them, right?
Yes, and it's so strategic too. So many times people say, "Oh, I've got a website, and it's cluttered, and there's too many options, and it's just these funnel pages, lead funnels, and sales funnels are. This is where it's at, and it ties into the video, and then your reputation goes along with it. And the last real thing that we do is to help. Now your funnels are. This is where it's at, and it ties into the video, and then your reputation goes along with it. And the last real thing that we do is to help people get indexed correctly with Google, because Google finds you have your name listed with ST space SAINT losing credibility with Google, and you won't show up for the searches that are related to your name when people are trying to find you, and you get a score related to that. And then again, that reviews piece, we know how to get bad reviews removed if you know to look for the right things that can show that they were not submitted correctly, and you can see where people were just kind of just going after you without doing it the correct way. And there's a list of criteria that we know to go after to get those removed so that you can have a good quality reviews and you take ones that are bogus out and it shouldn't have been authorized. And you put all that together, and we can really help a company drive a business. You end up with reviews. If you can, there's stats that show if you end up with an average of about a 3.3 or lower, if you end up with an average of about a 3.3 or lower, you're out of business within the next. You got to stay on top of that.
Carter, one of the things that a lot of business owners don't understand, and in fact, I'm actually, it used to really just shock me to no end that people would not know these real basic things, but you could spend, and people don't do this, but you could spend $100,000 on your website. You could have the best website in the world, literally the best laid out website in the world. But if it's not indexed and people can't find you, or you're not sending traffic to it with PPC or on Facebook, you don't exist. You essentially don't exist. And so everything you've said, you have nailed it right on the head. What are the ways that people can get a hold of you, to talk to you about this?
We put together a landing site that summarizes this and makes it easy, because our product talks about 3 different core components, and you can see these 3. We've covered them. Some ancillary things that are tied into that, but the 3 components we talked about, .com, that'll take you to our site. And then I'm easy to find as well as the Cardinal Cowboy. And I think the first 7 pages of Google end up being all about what we do with the Cardinal Cowboy.
How about a phone number? Because I know some people would rather actually use a phone. What's a phone number they can grab you guys at?
Yeah, we've got a business number that you can actually text to, and it goes through our routing through our system, but it's 636-565-0305. 636-565-0305, and somebody will help you directly right there.
Well, Carter, you know what? I really do appreciate you being on the call with this, and certainly once all the editing is done on the show, I'll shoot you over a copy of the show. But anyway, I do appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you in the future, and I'm just excited to see where you're going to take the things you're doing for small business owners and for the Cardinal Cowboy. I don't want to leave him out, but you're doing some really big things. I'm really happy to see that you're helping people here locally and across.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure being on your show. I really appreciate you getting the opportunity. I love what you're doing because you've really established that this stuff works, and you've got a system that proves it. And we all are joining together to try to help as many people as we can. And I think we're going to have a big impact. And people need to understand this internet thing is catching on, I like to say.
All right, Carter. Well,